Today, perhaps more than ever, a man is measured not by the noise around him, but by the quiet he can hold within. In a marketplace of trembling appetites, the Stoic stands like a column of stone under stormlight, unmoved, not because he is numb, but because he is sovereign. He knows the wind is not the ship. He knows the sea is not the destination. He knows the mind can be trained the way iron is tempered, with heat, with pressure, with the will to keep shape when the world begs for collapse. Most men chase applause until their lungs burn with borrowed air. The Stoic chooses oxygen from within. You feel the difference when you enter such a room. Your pulse slows, your shoulders drop, your thoughts fall into rank as if a commander has arrived. Discipline walks in without raising its voice, and the untrained impulses defer. Watch him where egos jostle for oxygen. He does not compete for claps. He competes against the smallness that once ruled his chest. Shadow work has given him a lexicon for the beasts in the basement. Envy that steals joy's rations. Rage that mistakes tenderness for threat. Pride that builds palaces on quicksand. He names them, then harnesses them like powerful horses bridled by meaning. Anger becomes information rather than a weapon. Fear becomes a scout rather than a jailer. Desire becomes a servant rather than a king. You recognize this in your own body when you pause before replying, when you taste the first bitterness of an old story and refuse to drink deeper. The Stoic's first victory is interior, a republic established where chaos once campaigned. A woman will test the temperature of a man's presence, the way dawn tests the horizon. The Stoic does not perform warmth out of fear of abandonment. He radiates warmth because his center burns clean. He understands projection, how unfinished work is thrown like paint at the nearest face and then called truth. He refuses to be a wall for other people's panic or a mirror for their illusions. He becomes a window instead, transparent to reality, letting what is be seen without distortion. You have felt the pull to fix, to rescue, to surrender your peace as tribute to someone else's storm. He does not pay that tax. He listens, he holds, he names, yet he will not be conscripted by drama. Presence without performance is steadier than comfort without spine, and his steadiness reteaches nervous systems how to breathe. Purpose is his north. Not career alone, not status, not the public ledger that turns souls into spreadsheets. Purpose as the disciplined practice of living, according to what is good, useful, and beautiful, regardless of witnesses. Each morning is a whetstone. Attention takes the blade's edge. Each night is a map table. He studies the day's terrain with candled honesty. He asks of every appetite, does this build the citadel or weaken it? He chooses fewer, deeper tasks and repeats them until they hum with mastery. You know this rhythm because your life improves whenever you replace frenzy with a simple sequence done well. He is a craftsman of hours, a keeper of gates. The world throws bait. He keeps fishing for meaning. The result is momentum without spectacle, competence without theater, a life heavy with purpose and light to carry. He does not confuse detachment with indifference. He loves with a guarded gate and an open courtyard. Boundaries are the architecture of his compassion, not the absence of it. He can say no without poison, yes without desperation, goodbye without ceremony. When chaos beckons him to dance, he returns to the body, feet grounded, jaw unclenched, eyes soft. The chosen tempo replaces the borrowed tempo. Nervous systems synchronize to the leader in the room, and leadership begins with breath. If someone asks him to be their medicine, He returns the prescription to the rightful hands. You have felt the holy weight of that refusal in your own life, the way a clean limit can become an act of love. He protects his inner court so that what enters it is worthy of the crown he guards. Individuation crowns his labor. He has met his anima, the inner feminine who requests tenderness without removing backbone, and he has made peace with the warrior who no longer requires an enemy to feel alive. Integrated, he becomes a quiet storm, gentle rain on the fields, thunder only when necessary. Praise does not intoxicate him. Criticism does not amputate him. He takes counsel from Marcus at dawn, from Seneca at dusk, from Epictetus through every interruption. Control what can be controlled, release what cannot. Transform what is within reach. You, standing where old habits plead for one more season, are invited into this sovereignty. Feel how dignity straightens your spine when you choose response over reaction. The first principle begins here: self-command before conquest. Rule the breath, and you will rule the impulse. Rule the attention, and you will rule the day. Rule the story you repeat to yourself, and the world stops being a courtroom and becomes a field for practice. He trains attention as a monk trains silence, until it becomes a shelter rather than a performance. The mind is a city with many districts, the marketplace of impulses, the courthouse of judgments, the library of memory, the temple of meaning. He walks each quarter at dawn, sweeping what is his to sweep, leaving alone what is merely weather. Responsibility moves with him like a standard held high, not the counterfeit responsibility that absorbs everyone's mess, but the noble form that says, "This thought is mine, this action is mine, this consequence is mine." When the crowd hurls blame like stones, he builds arches. When fortune withholds her seasonal grapes, he prunes the vine rather than cursing the winter. You know the taste of this rigor. The moment you stop arguing with what happened and start sculpting what could become, that is the threshold where guilt recedes and agency enters carrying tools. The untrained ego wants a throne. The trained ego wants a role. He studies the difference. A throne seeks worship. A role seeks service. So he selects roles that harden him in virtue: mentor, builder, protector, craftsman, lover, whose love is clean. He does not outsource meaning to applause or outsource accountability to fate. He keeps his promissory notes to the self: sleep, training, study, honest friendship, useful work, because he knows the nervous system recognizes truth long before the tongue confesses it. If the schedule is sloppy, the soul stumbles. If the diet is chaos, the will begs for truce. He engineers conditions where excellence struggles less to breathe. You are not powerless to create such conditions. Even a single disciplined hour each day is a fulcrum that lifts the weak. The Stoic finds his fulcrums and levers them relentlessly. Emotion, to him, is weather over a mountain, not command from a tyrant. He neither worships nor wages war against his feelings. He harvests them. Rage reveals a boundary. Envy reveals a neglected gift. Grief reveals the depth of attachment and the nobility of love. He writes these things in a private ledger, not to sentimentalize, but to alchemize. The shadow is not a dungeon to be sealed. It is a vault to be cataloged. Inside, he finds misused strength, sensitivity disguised as weakness, assertiveness misbranded as cruelty, tenderness exiled by old ridicule. He brings them home, gives them tasks, and watches power become precise. When an insult arrives, he reads it for data rather than drama. When a compliment arrives, he thanks it and sets it down like a flower on the step. Beautiful, but not nutritious. You can feel this calibration each time you pause, breathe, and choose language that protects both your dignity and the other person's humanity. That choice is not softness, it is sovereignty in motion. Desire requires a governor. He neither starves nor stuffs it, he steers it. Pleasure without principle breeds amnesia. Principle without pleasure breeds revolt. He navigates between those cliffs by aligning appetite to aim. A body trained to sweat for its joy will resist smaller temptations. A mind fed by wonder and study will crave less distraction. He uses ritual to anchor passion, a morning page of difficult truths, a midday walk without headphones, an evening audit that reads the day in the posture of a craftsman examining a blade. He honors romance not as theater, but as a collaboration between two disciplined nervous systems. He does not beg for certainty from the other. He contributes certainty to the bond, a steady presence, clean speech, respect for mystery. You have longed for that kind of bond, the one that feels like a harbor with a lighthouse, not a carnival with a spotlight. It begins where self-rule matures into shared rule, where two citadels exchange ambassadors rather than invaders. He understands the economy of attention in a loud century. Outrage sells, calm compounds. The world markets panic like a luxury item. He refuses the purchase. Instead, he builds slow capital, reading that thickens judgment, practice that layers skill, relationships that weather disagreeable seasons. He chooses to be bored by gossip and fascinated by craft. He is difficult to recruit into anyone's emergency that is not also his responsibility. This refusal is not cruelty, it is strategy. The nervous system cannot perpetually sprint without turning love into a chore. He keeps Sabbath in his bones, time to be nobody special, to let the psyche unmask, to hear the quiet inventory of needs. You know how clarity returns after such spaces, how generosity refills when the well is not raided. That is why his kindness is not brittle, and his strength is not theatrical. Both are funded by regular deposits. When conflict arrives, and life guarantees delivery, he treats it as dojo rather than battlefield. He names the objective, not victory, but truth, not punishment, but alignment. He speaks slowly, holds eye contact without hunger, asks questions that do not smuggle accusations. He declines to be a villain in someone else's script or a hero in his own myth. He wants outcomes, not accolades. If reconciliation is possible, he walks the bridge. If distance is wiser, he locks the gate without graffiti. He does not post his wounds for currency. He stitches in private and returns to duty with a cleaner seam. You can practice this today. Choose one friction and convert it into a lesson. What boundary to set, what apology to give, what silence to keep. Conflict then becomes education, and education in time becomes peace. He prizes simplicity as a weapon sharper than ornament. Where others decorate, he distills. The world offers labyrinths of optional complexity, endless notifications, performative projects, multi-tab lives that scatter the will like seeds thrown on concrete. He chooses a narrow corridor through which excellence must pass, a few rituals that turn the gears of the day, a few virtues that govern 1,000 choices. Simplicity is not smallness, it is concentration. Steel is only steel because the impurities are fired out. He learns to say no in a dozen elegant ways to protect the cathedral of focus from casual tourism. You know the relief of that narrowing. A desk cleared, a plan reduced to the essential 3. An evening defended from counterfeit urgencies. The psyche exhales when the scaffolds come down, and the structure stands by its own integrity. He treats courage as a habit, not a headline. Fear is a messenger with a crooked jaw. It shouts until it is given a task. So he assigns it one, inform, then step aside. He collects small acts of risk, the way monks collect hours of prayer, daily, quietly, without seeking applause. Speak the uncomfortable truth with kindness. Initiate the hard conversation before resentment sediments. Move the body on days the body asks to be worshipped by the couch. He understands that bravery without wisdom is theater, and wisdom without bravery is paralysis. You recognize the hinge of this union each time you follow insight into action, and action back into reflection. This is how a man becomes drought-resistant. He grows roots before he needs water. He studies power as responsibility under restraint. The untrained will uses strength to dominate rooms and win arguments. The trained will use his strength to stabilize rooms and solve problems. He knows how often aggression is merely the ghost of a boy trying to be tall. Shadow work makes him intimate with this ghost, not enslaved by it. He permits the warrior to remain, but places a philosopher over him, strategy over spectacle, mission over ego bloom. When provoked, he asks, what outcome protects dignity on both sides? When offended, he inquires, where is the doorway to growth? He can remain still while an insult searches for purchase and finds none. Your nervous system has tasted this paradox. Softness as greater strength, silence as deeper assertion. The body remembers the quiet after choosing not to retaliate. The soul remembers the dignity that choice buys. In love, he honors polarity without turning intimacy into theater. The masculine current he carries is presence, direction, containment. The feminine current he welcomes is movement, radiance, mystery. He neither worships nor suppresses either current in himself. He harmonizes them. When chaos arises in the bond, he does not audition for savior or collapse into sulking. He returns to clarity. What is the clean request? What is the non-negotiable boundary? What is the generous interpretation that preserves respect? He can lead the dance without stepping on toes, because he is listening with his whole frame. You have longed to both hold and be held in this way, to feel strength that does not coerce, and sensitivity that does not beg. Such love is an art of calibrated distance, near enough to warm, far enough to see. He measures wealth by optionality and conscience. Money is a tool, time is a garden, reputation is a weather pattern. He invests where compounding does not betray the soul, skills that no market can fully devalue, relationships that survive algorithmic winters, health that funds a longer horizon of service. He is suspicious of gains that require hidden apologies, of opportunities that need him to amputate a value to fit their doorframe. He prefers a smaller stage with a clean script to a larger stage where the lines corrode. You know the aftertaste of compromise. It lingers in the throat like smoke. He has learned to detect it early and decline the banquet with gratitude. When failure visits, he hosts it with questions instead of shame. Where did process break? Which assumption was vanity dressed as certainty? What iteration will honor the lesson without burying the ambition? He keeps a museum of errors and refuses to sell the tickets to anyone else. There is nobility in that privacy. Wounds are sutured by discipline before they are narrated by pride. He is not allergic to expert counsel, yet he never forfeits final authorship of his path. You may practice this in miniature today. Convert a regret into a protocol, a lapse into a guardrail, an apology into an upgraded behavior. Then, Notice how self-respect returns like sunrise, quiet, inevitable, erasing the drama without denying the night. He sees death not as a distant rumor, but as a present consultant. Memento mori is not morbid, it is clarifying. Under mortality's gaze, trivial wars dissolve and essential work glows. Petty victory loses aroma, honest love gains urgency. He chooses to leave fewer loose ends, fewer grudges, fewer unsent letters, fewer projects that exist only to feed an image. A man who has rehearsed his exit lives with lighter luggage. You have felt versions of this, how a brush with loss rearranges your priorities without asking permission. Keep that arrangement. Train in it. Let it chisel away the vanity projects until only offerings remain. Service completes the circle. Strength without service calcifies into vanity. Service without strength bleeds into martyrdom. He offers what he has without addicting himself to the thanks that may or may not follow. Mentorship, craft well delivered, protection of the vulnerable, generosity without ledger. These become the way he keeps the inner republic honest. He understands that a life aimed at the good does not need an audience to be large. Impact happens in concentric circles, beginning with the smallest governance, the breath, the schedule, the word given and kept. From there, the world changes by proximity to a man whose center does not wobble. He refines speech until it serves truth, like a blade serves a surgeon. Words are not decorations, they are instruments with consequences. He delays speech the way an archer delays release until aim is clean. A soft voice can carry iron when it is welded to clarity. Gossip becomes beneath his attention because it transfers power to rumor and subtracts power from reality. He replaces complaint with a request, sarcasm with precision, vague promises with measurable commitments. Silence is deployed as punctuation and as protest. When manipulation knocks in a friendly tone, he listens for the invisible invoice. What loyalty, what identity, what secret shame is being taxed, and he declines payment. He prefers the slow trust earned by congruence over the quick trust borrowed by theatrics. The result is a reputation that spends well. When he speaks, rooms recalibrate. He chooses solitude before loneliness can conscript him. Solitude is not absence. It is a vivid presence turned inward. The mind, when left alone without anesthesia, reveals its untidy shelves, its half-finished contracts, the small lies that keep anxiety solvent. He sits with that inventory like a craftsman before a workbench, touching every tool, discarding the rusted, oiling the essential. In such rooms, the anima visits, the inner feminine who requests feeling, form, and rhythm, and he listens without surrendering the helm. He becomes hospitable to nuance, the capacity to hold opposing truths without declaring premature victory. Modern life makes nuance scarce and outrage abundant. He becomes rare by reversing that ratio. From this rarity emerges a creative current, music of clean decisions, architecture of days that fit together, language that does not tremble under cross-examination. Ambition to him is a vow to the future rather than a performance for the crowd. He points it at arenas where winning does not require others to lose, mastery over a craft, expansion of opportunities for those in his orbit, restoration of order where entropy has colonized. He treats attention like currency and spends it on compounding assets, skill, stamina, discernment. The shadow often hides inside ambition, hunger for validation, masquerading as purpose. But he audits the ledger. If a project multiplies vanity while dividing integrity, he shutters it. If a venture feeds pride while starving wonder, He exits. He accepts that growth sometimes requires exiting identities that no longer fit. The corpse of an old self can be heavy. He buries it with ceremony and walks away without keeping the suit. Ritual protects him when motivation is late. He anchors mornings with a triad: stillness for direction, movement for heat, pen for reckoning. At midday, he interrupts noise with a brief exile, a walk that returns him to proportion, a breath ladder that steadies the frame. Evenings close with review, not condemnation. 3 actions kept, 1 improved, 1 forgiven. This is the boring scaffolding of greatness: small, repeatable acts, executed with reverence. He does not chase hacks, he builds habits. Hacks are fireworks, habits are sunrise. The nervous system falls in love with predictability, and from that love comes energy reserved for creativity rather than firefighting. He respects male friendship as a forge. Men sharpen men when they refuse each other's excuses and protect each other's dignity. He curates a council, a builder who measures twice, a father who apologizes quickly, a monk who keeps his word in the dark, a fighter who knows when to sheath. They disagree without declaring war, tease without humiliation, advise without colonizing. From such a table he draws perspective that saves him from the tunnel vision of solitary ego. He also becomes the kind of man whose presence raises the local standard. The proof is not in slogans, but in the unremarkable excellence of ordinary days. Workouts completed, fathers present, lovers respected, craft improved, accounts clean. He reads the body like scripture. Sleep debt disguises itself as moral failure. He pays it. Nutrition chaos impersonates weakness. He corrects it. A hunched spine manufactures pessimism. He lifts it. Somatic literacy lets him distinguish spiritual crises from simple fatigue, existential dread from a skipped meal, destiny from dehydration. Thus, he does not spiritualize what should be scheduled or medicate what should be mourned. He lets tears have their brief reign when they are truthful. Then he washes his face and returns to the task with eyes rinsed by reality. The body, respected, becomes a partner in courage. Disrespected, it stages rebellions at the worst time. Authority intimidates fewer men when authority is understood as agreement with natural law. He orients to principles that don't bargain, cause and effect, use and atrophy, attention and identity. He does not ask the universe to suspend physics for his comfort. He asks himself to align with physics for his freedom. The result is humility without self-erasure. He can say, "I was wrong," without surrendering the throne of self-governance, because truth is the higher monarch, and he serves it gladly. In this service, he becomes credible to those who went hungry for leadership that does not exploit, and attractive to women who long for steadiness that does not shrink. When life removes a pillar, love lost, money gone, reputation slandered, he kneels, gathers the rubble, and reads it. What load did that pillar carry? What beam must be reinforced elsewhere? What vanity did this collapse expose? He exits the scene with quieter eyes and stronger hands. Failure is not a verdict. It is a speaking architecture. He learns its language and edits his blueprints. In time, the structure that remains is less ornate, but more earthquake-proof. Those who visit feel safe without knowing why. It is because he has chosen weight-bearing truths over decorative lies. He carries forgiveness like a craftsman carries a whetstone, not for spectacle, but because blades dull and must be restored. Forgiveness to him is not amnesia. It is the refusal to chain tomorrow to yesterday's courtroom. He reads his own betrayals with the same severity He applies to others' injuries, and then he chooses to close the case so that labor can resume. Memory is allowed to keep its files. The heart is freed from clerical work. You know this freedom, the first clean breath after renouncing a grudge, the sudden spaciousness where strategies once argued with fantasies. In that atrium of freshly claimed air, energy returns to noble tasks. Peace is not a gift. It is a budget reallocation, from resentment to responsibility, from rehearsed indignation to rehearsed excellence. He cultivates detachment, not as ice, but as clarity. When praise arrives garlanded in admiration, he bows without intoxication. When blame arrives disguised as prophecy, he weighs it without surrender. External validation becomes weather again, sometimes bright, sometimes overcast, never sovereign. He recognizes how quickly the nervous system can be trained by applause to panic in silence. So he trains it otherwise. He builds rituals that reward effort over outcome, precision over performance, truth over trend. Social noise fades when private standards rise. He learns to be unsurprised by misunderstanding. Leadership and simplicity often look like arrogance to the disordered. The response is not posture, but patience. He lets time finish the argument. His imagination becomes sanctuary rather than escape. Instead of designing fantasies that exhaust self-respect, he designs rehearsals that strengthen future behavior. The difficult call made with calm tone, the boundary set without sarcasm, the temptation refused without drama, the tenderness offered without bargaining. The psyche learns from such staged courage, and the body follows. He rehearses grief too, so that when losses arrive, they find a house already cleaned of denial. Memento mori thus graduates from slogan to strategy. Mortality's mirror does not humiliate him. It clarifies him. Beneath that gaze, he organizes a smaller, truer life that radiates more. He reduces spectacle, expands meaning, and discovers that intimacy with the essential multiplies influence more reliably than performance ever could. He relates to the feminine, both within and before him, with reverent steadiness. The inner current of feeling is given its place at council. The outer woman is met with presence rather than theatrics. He stops confusing intensity with intimacy, drama with proof, demand with devotion. He gives clean offers and receives clean refusals. He does not chase confusion. He courts clarity. When love requires distance, he blesses it without writing tragedy, where there is only transition. When love opens, he receives it without staging a parade that tramples the very softness he is grateful for. This is how romance grows in oxygen rather than smog. Two people choosing daily, with boundaries that protect allure and honesty, that protects safety. You have known the exhaustion of pursuit without reciprocity. He refuses to fund that economy. Attraction is strongest, where dignity is unthreatened. In work, he becomes less of a brand and more of a craft. The hands learn to think. The eyes learn to weigh. The back learns to carry without complaint. He becomes easy to trust because he keeps agreements with reality. He underpromises, overprepares, and delivers without confetti. This unadorned competence is its own romance. It seduces chaos into order. The world slowly rearranges around such gravity. Opportunities come that previously would have collided with weaker orbit. Colleagues borrow his weather. Teams start to breathe at his cadence. He does not crown himself, outcomes do. He does not announce momentum, standards do. When the whisper of despair visits, suggesting that nothing matters, he escorts it to the balcony and shows it the horizon. Meaning is not discovered only in victories. It is compounded in the fidelity to worthy commitments, while outcomes flirt with uncertainty. He decides that a life devoted to the good is already a life worth living, regardless of trophies. This decision becomes the furnace of resilience. Hopelessness loses jurisdiction over a man who has chosen to be faithful rather than famous. The soul, relieved from negotiating its own value, begins to sing again, quietly at first, then with a timbre that turns rooms into chapels. He comes finally to a field without fences, the interior meadow of self-acceptance, rightly earned. Not indulgence, not resignation, acceptance as alignment with what is presently true and what is presently possible. He forgives the younger versions who bled on everything trying to feel alive. He thanks the warriors who fought the wrong wars because they kept the muscle memory of courage ready for the right ones. He lays down the weapons that once kept him safe and now keep him small. And in that laying down, something is born that does not need to be dramatic to be divine. A quiet man, deeply present, capable of joy without purchase and strength without threat. You feel it as you read, a loosening around the throat, a lowering of the shoulders, a widening of the gaze. The citadel is not a fortress against love. It is a home where love can rest. The world will remain noisy. Appetites will keep their arguments, but sovereignty will be practiced breath by faithful breath. This is emotional freedom, the ability to allow everything that is not your task to pass without interference, and to offer everything that is your task without bargaining. This is rebirth, not a new theater, but a new audience of one, the witness within who knows when you have been true. A gentler sun rises behind the ribs, calm becomes native. Decisions require less wrestling and more listening. The man returns to his life as if returning from sea, stepping onto a shore that has always been his. Only now he can claim it without apology.